All of us care about ourselves in the first place. We care about our loved ones, comfort, career. And only when we realize it is possible to fulfill our wishes due to social traits, it dawns on us that the obstacles was generated by the system. We perhaps would get interested in social order.
Очень многие продолжают упорно пытаться решить свои личные проблемы, игнорируя проблемы общественные. Именно поэтому
Many people would still approach their personal challenges, ignoring social shortcomings. That is why, having done a huge investigation of society, country, and humankind in general, I want to share my experience for the common good.
Причем этот опыт перешел в наши огромные общественные организации, и
This experience has become an asset of our huge public organization. Many people followed me in this way, and we became like-minded in aspiration. We clearly understand now that we cannot survive without each other, neither we without you, nor you without us. The simple reason is that our common planet has come to the term when it is up to us, the humankind, to decide either to be or not to be. According to the recent United Nations Global Environmental Outlook report, the humankind is on the cutting edge of catastrophe. In experts' opinion, Earth can run out of fresh water in 25 years. Some countries have already run out of fresh water for domestic provisions production. The Secretary-General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, announced on the first Asia-Pacific Water Summit that freshwater shortages threaten economic and social stability and become a potential source of wars and conflicts. Scientists have revealed up to 60 places in the world where a war over water is brewing. Seas are rapidly running out of fish, and in many places fish stocks has already depleted. Agricultural waste is creating enormous dead zones of water devoid of life. Industrial pollutants abound in biosphere and are contained in plenty in our food supplies. Industrial demand for natural resources already 3 times exceeds what planet has to offer. Unless we take joint efforts to solve existing crisis situations, the point of bifurcation will be reached in the nearest future, the report states. Imagine yourself listening to your favorite music, sitting comfortably in a cabin of sinking ship and not caring either your ship is sinking or sailing. Well known is Eastern understanding of humankind development as a consequence of races. The third race was called the Lemurian, the fourth was Atlantis, and the fifth race is us. Today, the fifth race is in its decline of development, and it is to be followed by the next race. We cannot stop a clock hand. The sixth race is on the way. It was predicted in Agni Yoga and on the east at the race of Lord Maitreya.
Лемурия погибла именно потому, что зашла в аморальность, в грехопадение.
Lemuria died because it plunged in immorality and sin. Ill mental energy of Lemurian humankind shook the universe, and Lemuria sank into water. Huge statues of Easter Island are considered to be symbols of Lemuria. After Lemuria's decline, it was replaced by Atlantis. As Dr. Moldashev, a Russian researcher, wrote in his books, Atlants are still staying in underwater and overground caves, their bodies being preserved in anabiosis at 4 degrees Celsius. I believe he is right because, although the civilization was very advanced, it plunged into a sin. Atlants started to use their superpower for the purposes of war, enslavement, and use of each other, or, in other words, for unethical relationships. Instead of living in harmony and mutual assistance and development in life, they fought wars and attempted to live at the cost of another. Today is the time of the fifth race decline, because we all came to, I would say, inconceivable sin and downfall. If before, even in the Bible, sodomy was considered a lechery, now they broadcast gay marriages sanctified by the Catholic Church. I was amazed watching how lovingly gays, with tears in their eyes, rejoiced registration of their relationships, and same way lesbians did. So today people do not consider homosexuality a sin, but rather an achievement of democracy. If formerly a girl, when getting married, appeared not to be a virgin, it was a disgrace for the whole family, and she was to be turned out of the house. Now, on the contrary, it is a disgrace to stay a virgin for a 16-year-old girl. Today, a ban on premarital intimate relationships seems to be a survival of the past. Why should I stint myself in pleasure? But the matter is not as simple as seems to be. Severe punishments for immorality that still exist, for instance, in Muslim countries, are quite reasonable from the point of view of preserving heredity and even health of a married couple and their descendants.
Биологи знают эффект телегонии, то есть перехода генной информации с одного человека к другому во время интимного контакта.
Biologists know telegenic effect, that is, transmission of genetic information from one person to another during an intercourse. It became clear during a biological experiment when scientists tried to cross-regulate horse with zebra, but experiment failed. After that, the mare was crossed with a regular stallion, not zebra, and gave birth to a foal, but this foal had zebra-like stripes. There were cases after Moscow Olympic Games in 1980 when white-skinned Russian spouses had black-skinned children, because during the Olympics the woman had sex with a black-skinned man, and although didn't get pregnant, she kept some information. That is not announced widely. But imagine a girl who has had 3-4 sexual partners. What a lot of information will she gather in her aura from all those family lines? And what if the guy have always had 2, 3, 5 partners each? Nowadays they might have even more. In result, people gather whole information from their parents' families in aura, and there is no way to get rid of it. I often tell those who easily perceive sexual life, you are giving birth not to a child, but to a genetically modified project. Only fidelity to spouse can bring real happiness and well-being to a family. Fidelity in sexual intimacy is the only way to ensure that your children will be children of your loved one and will inherit the best traits of both parents' families. What parents to be contribute to the fate and health of their progeny is a matter of lively interest for both kins. That is why parental consent for marriage is reasonable and essential. Unfortunately, today's youth are convinced that parents are not allowed to interfere their choice of partner for life. Underage sexual affairs and artificial abortions are utterly anti-humanistic and yet accepted in today's life. Russia holds the third first place in the world in the amount of abortions. Annually we lose more than 1 million of children aborted. Is it not a murder? Does anybody grieve about them? Buddhism considers human age since conception, not since a human in mother's womb already lives. He or she can feel, understand and reacts to events in the mother's life as if it was his or her own life. That is why psychologists recommend parents to communicate with their unborn children. But mothers and fathers go ahead and kill those who are their continuation in this world. The following poem by an unknown author is just about that. I'm a child who won't be born. Lonely soul with nickname no. Disturbing feeling in doctors' hearts. The matter is settled and no buts. I wish you, my parents, my mom and dad, to live an easy life, not to understand. Despite your sin, I love you so much, even it doesn't you touch. Artificial abortion is a murder, and the most awful thing about it is that the mother kills her own child. She victimizes her child's soul to material well-being, public opinion, and other things. Having forgotten field and wave nature of the universe, the mankind neglects eternal moral and ethical principles. As a consequence, it was plunged into bloody immolation and doesn't realize that. Indeed, it takes soul to bring to life fetus when it starts growing in a mother-to-be womb. Just like electromagnetic waves make TV or radio set work, physics and biological energy animates physical body of a human, running through the body and creating specific biological field around the body, an aura. Aura contains the whole information about the human being. When a woman gets pregnant, the aura of the future child comes to her aura. In the West, pregnant women say, "I'll be a mother." In the East, a pregnant woman considers herself a mother mother already. Indeed, she has a child, although he or she is growing. If human fetus is aborted by surgeon and forcibly thrown away from its mother's body, this child soul stays captured in the mother's aura and has no chance to reincarnate. It was not liberated and cannot reach the kingdom of God as souls of deceased people do. A woman who artificially aborts her child hardly realizes that she actually commits a kind of satanist ritual. She kills a human being and keeps the soul of the unborn human to suffer. And she will hardly be happy because the aborted human soul will suffer in her own aura. She is doomed to depressions and tragedies in future life and more. Fate punish murder, and twice the murder of your own child. That is why sexual intimacy is not just a fun, but a moral responsibility to give birth to your descendants. Sexual entertainment is akin to gladiators' battle in ancient Rome with shouting, "Kill him." Such entertainment is a straight road to disaster and collapse of civilization. People used to consider artificial abortion to be a mortal sin. Nowadays, society believes it to be a common surgery. Sometimes a man calls down the wrath of God really too much and does not deserve to have children. Formerly, in such case, people would pray for children and make pilgrimage to holy places. At present, nobody cares about disposition of God. People go for test tube babies to scientists who have learned how to evade God's will. Why aren't test tube babies God-inspired? There is an ancient spiritual practice of meditation during intimacy with beloved partner. At the moment of the high culmination of love, the child soul can hear future parents and comes down to them from high spiritual levels. The more harmonious parents are, the clearer their thoughts at the moments of conception, the more gifted child will come. And if the world prohibits people to have children, it means that the family line have brought a lot of disharmony and is not worthy of continuation. Test tube babies cannot get high souls. They are either soulless or mean spirits who continue to destroy the world. Scientists invented a method of replication of God's works, cloning. Terrible experiments on Dolly the sheep and dogs were performed. Fortunately, animals don't have human souls, but cloning experiments in human beings also take place. Before birth, the soul of a new child comes to the mother's aura. But who is going to give soul to a clone? It is one of the most severe ethical violations. I was deeply surprised when a Russian woman who lived in Berlin for 20 years told me that she was very proud that her son was taught in school how to use condoms. And when he was 16, he had sex with a girlfriend in his parents' house. And parents approved such affair of school children, for it was considered a democracy.
Наши дети предоставлены сверстникам, и субкультуры навязаны обществом.
Our children are placed in the disposal of peers, and the you subculture is imposed by society. Very often parents come to us worried and looking for help. They say, "What can I do to my child? He doesn't want to study, he wants to go out, have sex." The child would say, "I want to have sex, I am grown up enough, I have right to do it." Girls are not afraid of having child with no husband. They do not think that their child would ever ask them where the father is. All said indicates the crisis of civilization and the end of the fifth race. Archaeologists, historians tell us about extinct civilizations, countries and cultures, for example, Sumerian, Maya, Egypt, ancient Rome. Unfortunately, we do not care about their experience. But not to realize the nature of civilizations, religions and cultures gone means to unnecessarily expose humanity to same hazards. Notice, information about snakes, dragons and other reptiles first appeared about 10,000 years ago. Dragon or snake was one of many heroes who personified God in art of Egyptians, Indians, Aztecs, Maya, natives of Australia, China and African countries. Sumerian sources tell us about Anunnaki. They were considered gods from another planet who brought advanced knowledge to the earth. Anunnaki were the race of reptiles. Anunnaki crossbred with human beings, and hybrid races of man-reptile arose as a result. Ancient sources report these human-reptile kings are genetic hybrids of selected men and reptiles. Such genetic hybrids were said to be kings of North and Middle East in the advanced cultures of Sumer, Babylon and Egypt. Reptiles and their hybrids' blood contain more copper, which gives green-blue color after oxidation. Probably this is the reason for assertion that social elite's blood is blue. There is an opinion that for reptile man it is hard to preserve a human appearance, and that is why they have to marry only their own kind, rarely letting some fresh human blood. Remember, most of the royal persons make families only with their own rank, not allowing unions with commoners. Moreover, consumption of human hormones, flesh and blood helps half-reptiles to maintain human shape. Maybe that is why cannibalism and bloody sacrifices still exist on the earth.
Меня потрясла поездка в Мексику, где, как турист, я посетила все известные усеченные пирамиды, именно тем, что в обществе, ну, по крайней мере, в том информационном поле, в котором мы в России находимся, неизвестно.
I was shaken by Mexico truncated pyramids I visited. I was really shocked with the discovery of Maya civilization's black side. Cannibalism, sacrifices, bloodletting rituals, and worship of death, which is hardly recognized in our Russian information field. Temples where priests served ferocious services were built on the top of truncated pyramids. They worshipped flying snake deity. Doesn't it remind you a dragon from fairy tales on the other side of the earth? Maya tried really hard to propitiate this god, and were very scared to leave him hungry. The god ate souls. The god's mailman named Chakmol was to burn a sacrificed man's heart, releasing a column of smoke for the god, feathered serpent. Mayan priests with sharp obsidian knives opened up a victim's chest between ribs and tore out the heart by hands. Then they cut the heart on pieces and ritually ate it. This type of cannibalism was a rule, and the movie Apocalypse tells a real story about Mesoamerican Maya.
Я посещала вот эти города древние, восстановленные, и нам показывали площадки для игры в мяч.
I visited those ancient cities and saw courts for the ball game. In this game, the captain of the winning team was decapitated, in other words, sacrificed. And that was an honorable move. They chose the best young boys and girls who were rich, beautiful and smart, took them to the saunas, made them fast. After this purification, boys and girls went to immolation with a big joy.
С огромной радостью, потому что неизвестно еще, куда ты попадешь после смерти так-то, а вот тут уж точно к Богу.
They were not sure where they would end up after ordinary death, but sacrifice was supposed to bring them directly to the God. What is good and what is bad? If divided territory of the largely populated Maya state fought against each other only for the purpose of capturing for sacrifice, and as a result the whole city, about 80,000 people, suddenly disappeared, then where did they go? There is an information that Maya sacrificed themselves voluntarily. Maya civilization was highly developed, had observatory, temples, great architectural complex, but it lived in glory and in the name of feathered serpent Kukulkan. We all know highly developed Egyptian civilization, but it was also dominated by the cult of death. Here we have to know a little bit of esoteric and energy, or structure of human spiritual subtle bodies. Nobody denies energy meridians in human body. Chinese medicine is based on this knowledge. We also know about aura. Indian Ayurveda is based on that, and nobody can deny that. Europeans happily utilize advantages of both Eastern medical practices, yet stay stubbornly blind to their nature, which is understanding of concepts of chakras, aura, meridians, life energy. But energy, chakras and aura inevitably relate to spiritual development, moral and ethical state of the person and his way of life. Tibetan medicine states that if a person is sick, the first thing to do is to correct the diet. If that doesn't help, he should change the lifestyle. If that doesn't help, only then a man can take drugs. If so, why do we think that it's a shame and charlatanism to talk about energy centers, chakras and auras? Supporting such attitude in population is a perfect way to keep the advantage of the real knowledge for a restricted group of powerful people. Indeed, the powers that be have always had esoteric experts in service, and often were esoteric experts themselves. Today is a very good time for all people in the world to assimilate esoteric knowledge, but of course efforts are made not to allow this knowledge spread. As Giordano Bruno was not allowed to people, as America was not allowed to be discovered until certain time, same way they don't want to give people any information about bioenergetic. I, on the contrary, believe that we need to study it along with psychology, physiology, because it explains human, relates us to the universe. It explains the structure of the world and, what is the most important, laws of the world, deliberately hidden from us. Why? That is convenient for the powers that be. They obtain ample opportunity to violate any laws and implicitly train population to live in violation of moral and ethical norms. Human aura is an energetic egg-shaped shell around the body and consists of 7 layers. The first layer is a physical body. The second is ethereal, responsible for health. The third is astral. It's the field of feelings. The fourth layer is mental, the field of thoughts. The fifth is karmic. It contains information about all deeds of the person. The sixth is celestial. It contains information about the future of the person. The seventh layer is causal. It is the bridge from terrestrial to cosmic energy. All fields spin clockwise or positively if the person is healthy, is working and creating. The fields spin counterclockwise or negatively if he is sick or selfish and takes vital energy from those around him while he demands, forces, accuses or complains. In 1939, Soviet scientist the Kirlians invented a device for photographing aura. Today, aura cameras are available in many cities and all comers may take pictures of their aura. Karmic field is the most important one. Ancient Eastern philosophy states that karma is action. Every action performed by a person will be returned to him by the universe. Interestingly, the action is not only deeds, but also thoughts, feelings, intentions of the person. Intention to kill and murder are equal. Karma is a reflection of everything accomplished by the person, either bad or good, and everything deserved by the destiny. Karma determines all present and future events, meetings and possibilities. We usually formulate it as follows: what goes around comes around, or do not spit in the well, the drinking water can come in handy. Many people call it the law of boomerang. After natural death, spiritual body separates from the physical one. Ethereal, astral and mental layers of the aura are being destroyed on the 3rd, 9th and 40th day accordingly. That is why these days are appropriate for funeral feast. On the funeral feast, relatives say only good things about the dead person, and by doing this they give his soul energy to lift to the high realms of the space that we call celestial. Christian Orthodox prayers for the dead have an appeal to the God, an appeal for the late, set them in the courts. By saying that, people wish the soul to ascend to the kingdom of heaven. Eastern philosophy, the doctrine of reincarnation, states that in the highest energy informatic spheres a person is not just having a rest between incarnations, but sums up all past lives and sets goals for the future life. Therefore, life is a school, and incarnation is like one semester in the school. Raymond Moody tells about it in his books Life After Life and Life After Death. He tells us about reincarnation, and Jesus Christ also told us about it in the Bible, although it was concealed. Jesus Christ told his followers about John the Baptist, in whom prophet Elijah reincarnated. In the Gospel according to St. Matthew, his disciples asked him whether Elijah have to come before Messiah. Jesus Christ answered, Elijah is coming and will restore all things. But I say to you that Elijah already came and they didn't recognize him. So what is it? A human soul. Soul is the main value that contains personal, individual characteristics of the person, which he has been acquiring and improving during many lives. A person makes many mistakes and suffers a lot before he comes up with a right conclusion and accepts all the right principles of the universe and human's life by himself. All this knowledge crystallized by the hard work and trials are summing up in one file. Agni Yoga calls that cup of wisdom. To acquire further wisdom, a man has to be incarnated again and work hard by the soul. Little by little he becomes saint, who moves from the selfish warriors to the understanding of himself as a part of humanity and that he cannot be happy apart from it. Saint is a person who thinks on the scale of the whole planet, but not on his own narrow, machinery, and as a result, dead-ended interests. Every soul has its own potential of opportunities earned during the incarnation of the earth in the physical body. This potential or karma of a person may be compared with a bank account. By having a specific karma, a person has specific opportunities for receiving earthly blessings in the physical world. The type of people parasites who possess certain knowledge in magic and witchcraft hunt for this potential and opportunities. Expressions like to sell a soul, to enslave a soul exist not for nothing. The most prevailing way to execute that is sacrifice. What happened to souls of Maya-bloody cult victims? When a human is sacrificed, his soul, destiny, rights that he earned are taken by whoever this sacrifice was made for. Enslaved soul is spinning negatively, counterclockwise, because a magician is taking away, stealing its power. This soul, in turn, has to take power from a living person, whom this soul has to possess by the magician's order. Thus, the living person, who is possessed by the soul of the sacrificed man, has a ban on happiness, improvement, and health. Dead souls become locks on the way to the happiness and freedom for those whom they possess. Imagine such a souls languishing in underground prison instead of being in the realms of kingdom of heaven. Thus, depression is immersed in the heart of a living person. This person who has a dead soul inside his aura will not have a will to live indeed. In order to take a will to live from the whole nation, they have to possess it with many sacrificed souls. Numerous human sacrifices have been made for massive enslavement of the will of living power. That is why women are forced to go through artificial abortions. It's just like many sacrifices of unborn children by their parents, just to maintain their well-being. It is God who gives a soul and vitality to a newly born. Same way, when the time comes, God takes the soul of a man to a higher world, where it will prepare for the next incarnation. By the way, souls of murdered and self-murdered people do not go to the kingdom of heaven. Those souls stay among living people, suffering without physical body. Their relatives and friends living next to them also tortured and tormented, feeling torments of death, but they do not realize, do not understand why they are suffering, because the souls of prematurely died are invisible to them. Greek Orthodox cemeteries, Catholic burial vaults, Egyptian mummies, wars, acts of terror, causing unnatural deaths of many people. All these tied souls to the earth. These souls cannot ascend to the higher realms. They just do not have enough energy for that. As a result, these souls stay lost and miserable. If a deceased person's body was buried, a material bond with his or her soul remains. Sepulchral soil or some items from the cemetery can be used to affect living people, their aura, infusing a negative, pathogenic energy of a deceased person in them. Moreover, cemeteries, and especially burial vaults, are a territory of pathogenic and unhealthy energy. No wonder it is so unpleasant and scary to walk there. Surely one should do anything to help a deceased man's soul live for proper after-death life, so that it could get released of physical material, and especially dirty, rotting mass of physical body. What did ancient Egyptians do?
А что делали египтяне? Они мумифицировали тело, они не давали ему разложиться, и они привязывали душу к телу. То есть не давали ей уходить в миры.
They mummified bodies, not allowing them to decompose. So they anchored a soul to a body and forbade it to leave for subtle worlds. A soul was taken captive to possess alive people. A special ritual came up to our days to inform us that Egyptian priests linked soul and body of dead people. Priest prayed over the mummy for 70 days. On the 30th day, he performed a ritual of opening eyes and mouth, saying a spell and exclaiming, "You will be young forever, you will live forever." That means that a human remained in the world which he should have left to have a rest. Funeral is a ritual of living, sending off a human to divine worlds. However, the above ritual anchored a soul to a mummy, to its physical body. It was a ritual of soul enslavement. Rituals like this are sorrowful, but imagine how many thousands of Egyptians were mummified. The serpent's cult overpasses here too, because the serpent enslaved souls of deceased people, not letting them to live to the kingdom of heaven, but capturing them. Not for nothing, a headdress of Pharaoh had a serpent, a symbol of authority. Mayas and Egyptian civilizations were based on dark cults, not divine. Their gods were against human. Those whom Maya and Egyptians considered gods killed humans to enslave their soul and limit their development. Why do we consider these civilizations great? The one who rules is always raised in every civilization. But is it really true? Does he rule in a good cause of us? Mainly, this glorification gives the right to rule. People are explained that it is good and it is necessity, and this very ruler will bring the good. When Nefertiti came to Egypt, she brought the cult of the sun to replace existing cult of the moon, the cult of death. She ruled for a very short time. Another wife was brought to Akhenaten, and Nefertiti was drove away. After her demise, Tutankhamun, whom she brought up in the cult of the sun, restored the cult of the moon. You know, our life depends on the sun, and we really need to head for the sun. I think that nowadays everyone must know that struggle between these powers, the sun and the moon, is constant in the humankind history. One way or another, everything is a reflection either of light or of a dark. Divine masters like Buddha, Jesus Christ, have always been sent to help people. Each of them led humanity to the light at certain era. In spite of it, the forces of darkness always try to take this help away from people, turning them to darkness, to rupture with spiritual masters. How did they do that? By taking away authority and honoring saints, by inculcating dirty gossips and defamation about sacred in the consciousness of people. Remember accusations of chief priests and elders, "Are you the king of the Jews?" alluding to the fact that Christ wanted to overthrow the illegitimate ruler and become a king. People at all times easily believed and now believe in gossips, and thus they kill with their own hands those who come to rescue them. By doing this, they not only lose divine help, but also commit a crime against those whom the world has sent. And after the retribution for what has been done catches the culprit, he prays to the same divine world against whom he violated the law. Isn't that a paradox? It is a miracle the divine world still can hear our prayers. Mercy of divine masters is enormous. Dying on the cross, the Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." The only way to get help from the divine masters of humanity is to pray to them for help. They have no right to intervene in your destiny without your appeal. The free will law is a core law of the universe. Encephalogram can register electromagnetic waves of brain in its different states. So far, science has identified 3 main states of human brain: wakefulness, fast sleep, and slow. Professor Valery Slezin, director of a laboratory in Institute of Psychoneurology named after Bechterev, reported that was discovered another state of the brain that can be called prayerful wakefulness. After we made dozens encephalograms of human brain during praying, we registered an amazing phenomenon, Professor Slezin says. In prayerful state, cortex is in a way turned off. Information perception is in process, but passes intellectual analysis. During the prayer, pathological bonds between neurons are getting broken. That is a possible explanation of health recovery through prayer. On the scientist's opinion, prayerful wakefulness state is as much necessary for us as other states. If we are missing this state, the harmony in our body breaks down and diseases appear. Moreover, this state makes a human be a human. Let's try to imagine how the prayer works. When in prayerful state, when appealing the heaven with love, faith and reverence, our brain emits special electromagnetic waves. These waves of a high electromagnetic frequency reach spheres carriers of electromagnetic field of divine civilizations. We tune in on their frequency of thinking and they can receive our broadcast. Human brains waves and waves of the divine civilizations reinforce each other many times. The waves create a protective, energetic shield for our planet that can save and take us to the next era, golden age. If several people pray, each of them reinforce the others by 7 times. If 3 people pray, they reinforce the prayer of each other by 7 squared times. 4 people by the cube of 7, and so on. If the whole country prays, our energy will be able not only to push hostile reptile civilizations away, but also to explode it and remove it from the world forever.
Борьба сил тьмы и света сейчас пришла в такое яростное исступление, что не замечать ее невозможно.
Struggle between dark and light forces is so furious now, and it is impossible not to notice it. Still, we persevere to consider what is happening an accident and impossible. We blink and bury our heads in the sand because what is going on is very anxious, and we have strong psychological defenses. We think that everything will be all right, although it is only us who can make everything be all right. You have to take helm in your hands and turn away from precipice.
Что же за пропасть, в которую мы идем? Еще раз давайте вспомним нашу историю. Массовое, тотальное истребление людей.
Is it natural for a human to kill one of his kind? We are not brutes indeed. And there is enough of resources, food, fresh water and air for all people on the earth. Yet, special conditions are being created for some people to have everything and for others to have nothing. Some people were deprived during all their lives, looking for a piece of bread or for some comfort. The others have everything and try to convince everyone around that it's them who deserve that, and that others must obey them because the world is arranged so. No, the world is like we agree to take it.
Обязаны ему подчиняться. Так устроен мир. Нет, он устроен так, как мы согласны его видеть. И почему мы согласны видеть такой мир?
10 to 12,000 years ago, serpents appeared in cultures of many peoples. It means that all peoples caught a sight of them. Decline of humanity from paradise to serpent's prevalence lasts during the last 10,000 years. A human gets more and more serpent's features, living far from his divine spiritual being. More and more features of inhuman, anti-spiritual and satanic cult appear in social life.
Все мы знаем, что есть такое явление, как деревенская магия.
Well known is phenomenon of rural magic. I think there is no one in Russia who would deny its strength. We know what love spell is. Love is blind. So when a person truly loves, he loves an equal one, and relationships are equal, harmonic, developing and enriching each other.
А когда человек приворожен, он не видит ничего плохого в предмете своего обожания, он его обожает не критично и дарит ему свою судьбу, и в полном подчинении, обожании, эйфории несет плоды своего труда, так сказать, к ногам возлюбленной или возлюбленного.
When a person is under a love spell, he adores blindly and gives away his destiny, being in euphoria and in the grip of a beloved one, brings fruits of his labor at her feet during whole life. Strange as it may seem, graves and dead souls are used to charm someone. Taxi drivers know that in the rub-up to Orthodox or satanic holidays, amount of orders increases by midnight. People come just to cemetery. That is our reality, unfortunately. Numerous booklets, papers and schools teach to wait on those graves. And we cannot just turn away from that, because that is a great power that interferes in a private life, which is all in all for everyone. Multiple movies depict royal court magicians working in king's courts. Magicians, mages, priests always were by kings, princes, pharaohs, etc. There always were occultists who used wisdom concealed from common, uninitiated people. We know that both Hitler and Stalin were followers of one tutor, Gurdjieff. And we also know that Gurdjieff was esoteric expert, studied Tibet and Mesopotamia a lot. Maya pyramids appeared in Mesopotamia, which is one of the evidences of connection between Eastern and Western hemispheres. These truncated pyramids moved across the ocean into Mexico and from Mesopotamia, and these pyramids always contained a head of a red-headed man who was an oracle. This head prophesied receiving information from spiritual layers. Priests took the head of a red-headed man, put golden plate in his mouth, and placed his head in truncated pyramid. By doing this, priests could get omnipotence over the people. Very interesting that Stalin built the truncated pyramid on the Red Square, called it mausoleum, and placed the red-headed man into it, not just the head.
Под названием мавзолей на Красной площади и поместил туда рыжего мужчину. Правда, не отдельно голову.
What is mausoleum? According to official version, mausoleum was built after the death of Lenin, when the Kremlin was flooded with telegrams and letters from people requesting to leave the body of the great person retained for centuries. However, those letters were not found in archives. Surely Lenin did not want to become a mummy to be used for mercenary ends, torturing the soul. It is known that Lenin's wife asked Stalin to commit body of Lenin to the earth by burying him in Ulyanovsk city. Stalin answered her that body of Lenin did not belong to him any longer, but to people. Note that the deeds intended to kill people are always camouflaged with benefits of the people. Mausoleum was built in classical form of ziggurat, occult construction of ancient Babylonian. On the top of ziggurat, truncated pyramid, temples were built where people were being killed as a sacrifice to Saturn, serpent. Scientists noticed that stepped pyramids look like antenna. We can assume that forms and sizes of each pyramid were tuning it in energy informational channel, along which the vital energy of victim was passing to feathery serpent. Teraphim, a talisman made of mummified body, was placed inside the pyramid. The purpose of the teraphim was to pump energy out of all living things around and pass it to the spirit of serpent. In order a pyramid with teraphim to pump energy out of specific group of people, it was to be tuned in the wave of the people's collective mind. For this purpose, different artifacts were used, and the brightest mouthpieces of people were ritually killed. Rulers of Mesopotamia kept people in obedience and submission with the help of this occult energetic structure. We may not affirm that the mummy of Lenin placed in mausoleum-like ziggurat is a teraphim, pumping energy off Russian people, but many evidences indicate that hands of the leader, like hands of teraphim, are folded in sacral pose. Left hand is stretched towards the entrance, receiving an energy, right hand clenched in a fist. The decision to embalm the leader was made by Felix Dzerzhinsky, powerful leader of political police. Department of Political Control and Criminal Investigation managed the process of the mausoleum's construction. We may therefore conclude that NKVD, organized by Dzerzhinsky, and then KGB, FSB, also had occult nature. To make a teraphim, a ritual sacrifice is needed. If constructors of mausoleum-like ziggurat wanted to subordinate Russian collective spirit, they needed special blood, sacral sacrifice of Russian spirit's carrier. The blood of Yesenin, an eminent Russian poet, went very well with such ritual. Maybe his death was not accidental. The poet was dead on December 27, 1925. People close to OGPU, United States Political Directorate, launched investigation of this case. The official expert's conclusion stated that Yesenin hanged himself. Nevertheless, deep wounds were found on his hands. He was covered with blood, and his body had no signs of death from hanging. The people formed an opinion that there were OGPU officers managed by Dzerzhinsky who killed Yesenin. There remained notes by contemporaries of Russian Revolution in the beginning of the 20th century. It is claimed that after the execution of Russian Tsar's family, a volumetric wooden suitcase was brought from Yekaterinburg, supposedly with heads of the last Russian Tsar and Tsarina, preserved in pots with alcohol. There is a version that those heads were also placed in mausoleum to ensure obedience of Russian imperial house to reptiles or to those who planned this ritual of murder and mausoleum-like ziggurat. The murder of Tsar's family was ritual. Their souls were enslaved to become locks on Russian imperial house and Russian people. For mausoleum to encompass all Russian people's mind, an ancient artifact was needed, preferably from ancient Slavic sanctuary. In 1923, an expedition was sent to the Kola Peninsula by the order Dzerzhinsky. The Kola Peninsula being the place where Hyperborean, the ancient Slavic homeland, was located. Apparently, the purpose of the expensive expedition during the difficult times of hunger was to find an artifact from Mausoleum. The most mysterious feature of Mausoleum is its right corner. There is a strange triangle niche with a thorn in the middle of the right corner. During parades and demonstrations, the streams of people always moved toward the thorn, as if under its side. Interior corners have ability to absorb energy. Indeed, when a child is naughty, he is sometimes placed in corner to calm down. Outer corners, on the contrary, radiate energy and can punch out human aura. That is why it's considered an ill omen to sit down at the corners of a table. Therefore, the niche and the thorn of the mausoleum is a site of a complicated energetic weapon. Amazing feature of this unusual part of a huge building placed on full view of large masses of people is absolute invisibility. People do not see this strange part of all, do not pay any attention at it. Ability to remain unnoticeable, invisible, is the main skill of the system that uses energy information to harm people. National traits of Russian people are widely known. Their urge to communal, breadth of soul, generosity, temerity in defending their native land. What happened to Russian people after constructing of mausoleum like ziggurat? Passivity, intimidation, disconnection and other similar characteristics stuck to the Russians and became synonyms of their nationality in the 20th century. Is lack of unity really a Russian genetic characteristic? No. Whole Russian history proves that. In the 20th century, the world witnessed a real miracle. Great 150 million nation that built the world's largest and most powerful state, won many wars and had an ancient history, suddenly was turned into an obedient herd. Because mausoleum, a specially turned mechanism that affects conscious will and life of our people, is still on the red square. All vital energy of nation is flowing into it like in sand. Soviet Union disappeared. Streets and squares of Lenin were renamed and gained their historical names. Leningrad was renamed into St. Petersburg. Lenin's museums were closed and monuments of Lenin were demolished. Nevertheless, the building with mummy of Lenin is still on the red square. Evidently, this building remains a firm part of a system, invisible and useful for someone. There is an opinion that energy informatics is used by governors and politics nowadays. The following is an example from the recent past. During the victory parade in 2010, mausoleum was covered with the image of Russian flag, and this linen had a symbol of eternal fire with five-pointed star with its ray down. We all know the picture by Leonardo da Vinci where a man is inscribed in such star. On his picture, star's tip looks upward, and this sign is life-assorting figure. When the star is turned with its tip down, according to all encyclopedia of symbols, it personifies a god, and that is Satanism. This type of star with a tip down was pictured on the logotype of past victory parade, and it cannot be hidden. It is doubtful that people who created this logotype are unfamiliar with symbols. This symbol, pictured on flag, means the following. Our country was stamped with the wish to stain it with blood, Satanism. And at that moment, NATO troops, who shed much blood of innocent civilians from different countries, were marching on the Red Square. Many sociologists predict chaos, bloodshed in Russia, which has already been provoked recently by nationalistic showdowns. The parade in front of such indicating symbol was held at the same time all over Russia. It was a hierarchy of parades. The parade in Moscow passed its meaning to other parades that were held simultaneously in other cities. That is how the information about triumph of Satanism, cult of murder of whole humanity, was applied to all Russia. In addition, by stylizing and making it unnoticeable for eyes of average person, they stamped eternal fires with the number 666, the meaning of what we all know. The following is another example of how dark forces globally steal pure energy of saints who were sent to the earth. Today many people would rather agree that there are no saints in our time, yet that is not so. Ashram of Sati Sai Baba existed for more than 70 years in South India near Bangalore. Sati Sai Baba was a real Indian saint, a miracle worker able to materialize objects, and he lived in our days. He was a great devotee who made so much to ease life of Indian people. In the village of Puttaparthi, located in arid hot India, he laid a water supply system. He kept many medical and educational institutions where people could receive service free of charge. With his own power, he helped hundreds of thousands of pilgrims to solve their problems with health and personal lives. Many evidences, both written and oral, witness miracles made by this saint almost on everyday basis. He materialized expensive gifts in front of the eyes of thousands of people. Every day he materialized divine ash, Vibhuti. He materialized 2 medallions that have shed divine serum, Amrita, for many years. However, after his death, a number of articles and TV programs appeared blaming him for being a charlatan. Around the same time, a grand ceremony of beatification of the Pope of Rome was held. It was pretty hard to find even one miracle seemingly committed by him. A French nun, Mary Simon Pierre, asserted that after she prayed to the late Pope John Paul II, she healed of Parkinson's disease. This step looks like stealing of sanctity, of the real help that Sati Sai Baba gave to common people throughout his life. We all know very well that Catholic Church discredited itself many times. Widely known are offenses of Inquisition, crusades, indulgences, the burning of Giordano Bruno, the persecution of Galileo Galilei, and pedophile priest scandals are widely known. Even souls of saints become subject to rituals committed by servants of serpents, attempting to anchor soul to physical body, as an example with mummification ritual. After the death of Sati Sai Baba, it was announced that a mausoleum was to be built for his body. Seems like they tried to connect Indian people to generator of vampirism the same way as Russian people were connected to mausoleum of Lenin. This thought is supported by the fact that during the funeral of Sati Sai Baba, pilgrims were not allowed to see how the body was buried because the whole event was hidden behind a heavy curtain for a long time. The audience must have thought that the act was so sacred and they were not worthy to see it. Maybe whatever was going on there was not supposed to be seen by common people because could expose real intentions of funerals officials. Curtain on the grave of Sati Sai Baba remind Victory Parade on Red Square in Moscow on May the 9th in 2010, when mausoleum of Lenin was covered by the image of Russian flag. The question arises, what was it made for? Was it to play the role of a screen behind which something was happening? Because you know ziggurat, that is prototype of mausoleum, is a cult construction designed for rituals. Funeral of Patriarch Alexis II also comes to mind, during which his face was covered with airy kerchief. Believers were persuaded that it was a funeral tradition for higher church officials. However, after the funeral, it turned out that Alexis' death was a result of injury. He slept in the bathroom in his chambers. Patriarch remained lying on the floor for several hours because his chambers were locked from the inside and his body was found only in the morning. Future Patriarch Cyril explained about the death of Alexis as follows.
Бывает так, что иногда Господь некоторое время дает церкви некое испытание.
It happens sometimes that God sends church an ordeal for a while. When a head of a church is an old and almost unable to manage, it is very hard time for the church. The Holy Patriarch passed away and protected our church from this hard time.
Один принцип руководит развитием всей планеты, нашей страны и лично вашей жизнью и моей, вот этого практически никто не знает.
The same principle guides the progress of our planet, our country, and your and my personal lives, but people rarely realize that. This principle is struggle of evil, serpentine source in society that is being consciously carried by large masses of people, and is invisible for average, uninitiated people who do not understand why, with all their desire and attempts, they cannot be healthy, happy, wealthy, and society cannot be harmonious, and family can't be whole and full cup.
А дело все в том, что вот эти рептилийные гены, ДНК, основа зла, тайна, проникнувшая, а может быть и явно, потому что они везде нарисованы, эти змеи, да? Но потом люди забыли об этом. Вот эта основа,
It is all that this reptile gene's DNA, the base of evil, secretly or maybe evidently penetrated into all spheres of our life, evidently because snakes are pictured everywhere, people just forgot about it. And this principle is traced in all countries, eras and times. Today we came to the cutting edge, when either we defeat the dragon, as St. George the Dragon Slayer and Ivan the Hero did, or will perish as dead planet Mars and Phaethon, where civilization disappeared from surface of the planet but left clear tracks. Between Mars and Jupiter, celestial bodies, minor planets or asteroids were found. Astronomer Heinrich Olbers considered them to be splinters of once existed planet. It was Phaethon. Why did the planet die? Did people inhabit it? Between Mars and Jupiter, celestial bodies, minor planets or asteroids were found. Astronomer Heinrich Olbers considered them to be splinters of once existed planet. It was Phaethon. Why did the planet die? Did people inhabit it? It is very important for us to understand that. It would be a great lesson for us to understand why life on the planets disappeared. Mars is already a lesson for us. There is Acidale Valley on the northern hemisphere of Mars. On the picture we can see a rock located on this valley. It reminds a human face turned to the sky. This picture was took by apparatus Viking 1 in 1976 and were found by experts from NASA during their pictures processing. Along with Sphinx, a few pyramids were discovered on Mars. Together, they compose a real architectural group. Specialists prove the interconnection of Egypt's constructions with hypothetical Martian civilization, where they discern the nearby terrain that looks like pyramids, roads, houses, and other. Why is the planet dead? Why does it have no atmosphere now? Perhaps Mars itself created premises for losing atmosphere and then perished. Now the fate of our planet is being resolved. The question is whether we shall disclose the serpentine nature which leads us to the precipice, whether we shall tear it out from society and ourselves. Realize, massive murders are alien to a common, ordinary man, but unnatural for serpentine nature, and they demand large sacrifices. Serpents are killers by their nature. They feed on other lives. This is the guarantee of their existence. They cannot survive without eating up souls. The ultimate aim of serpents of the earth is to kill the whole humanity, and we are now through the final stage of realization of the aim. The end of the world is a prophecy about our time. Nevertheless, it is in our power to turn it to become the end of the dark time.
Согласно библейским сказаниям, совратил Адама и Еву, змей-искуситель, нечистый дух в образе змея.
According to the Bible, the serpent, an evil spirit in the form of a snake, seduced Adam and Eve. Maybe the biblical serpent was a warning to people about Anunnakis and their descendants. Note that reptiles inhabiting our planet are only distant relation to alien reptiles and Anunnakis to alien serpent civilizations. Researchers believe earthly atmosphere proved fatal for alien reptiles. Their physical bodies are unable to exist in the aura of the earth. Energy of people is too pure and spiritual for snakes. Love and kindness, morality and selflessness of people are like a hot iron for them. That is why alien reptiles can only exist in our planet in disembodied form, that is, in the form of energetic formations, spirits, or through possessing a physical body of people, using it as a cover. Principles of serpent's nature have controlled the life on Earth for many years. To prove that, let us compare historical facts.
Концентрационные лагеря, где были печи, уничтожающие массы людей.
Hitler applied concentration camps where masses of people were burned in ovens. Both Hitler and Stalin needed human sacrifices in overwhelming quantities. Hitler was an esoteric expert. He had parapsychological academy with huge staff of psychics and telepathists. We all know Anna Nerber that studied parapsychology. We all know that SS was a sect. They were Masons who put on uniform and became military men to carry further their deadly politics in the world. Same way, NKVD executed by shooting crowds of people. There are shooting pits in Katyn and other absolutely unknown burial places where crowds of anonymous people were shot because sacrifices were needed. We know that shot were innocent people. But what were all those deaths for? Incomprehensible. And only if you look from the perspective of gaining power over masses of people, enslavement of people, it becomes clear that rulers want exactly mass sacrifices. Idi Amin in Uganda continues with the line. He personally shot 2,000 people. During his governance, 500,000 people out of 19 million in his country were shot. Dead bodies were thrown into the river, and even dam could not function because it was stuck with corpses. Pol Pot killed 1/5 of population, which is 2 to 3 million people by different estimations. And he commented that just innocently, we were like inexperienced kids and committed mistakes. He never considered himself a monster and presented all his deeds as done for struggle for better future and justice. Kukulkan was the first, followed by the ideology of Aryan supremacy, with a must to get rid of other nations, that is, not Aryans. Then, the theory of communism and dictatorship of the proletariat appeared, where enemies of the nation were massively shot. These days, mass victims are executed by wars that are also unleashed under pretense of kindness, bringing freedom and human rights protecting. Forces of NATO who present themselves as peacemakers were bombing Yugoslavia, where every third killed person was a child. What kind of peace do they make? In an Afghanistan village, they killed 120 people, and all of them were old and children. That also was presented as fighting against illegal drugs. Nowadays, hundreds and thousands of people die inexplicably in acts of terror. Who needs these terrorist acts? Any terrorist act pursues a specific object, for example, to force implementation of a political demand. There is always somebody taking advantage of such act. Yet, same with Russia and America, when Twin Towers collapsed, there were no political demands and executor remained unknown. Even if eventually they announce executor to us, the person would be inevitably dead by the moment. It means that to prove him guilty or innocent would be impossible. In 2007, on the eve of May the 9th, the Victory Day in Russia, a miner in Mezhdurechensk, Russia blew up. Many people, miners and mine rescuers, died. In Russian, Mezhdurechensk sounds very much like the name of the land where Sumer lived. And the tragedy in Mezhdurechensk reminds very much sacrifices of masses of people in Sumer for the sake of their god, who helped them to rule people. Now we realize that terroristic acts were organized by those who need these acts for ruling. A very strange coincidence occurred in the city of Ryazan, Russia, when common people discovered an intention of explosion of apartment building and reported to the municipal FSB. FSB worked it out well and arrested executors. But suddenly it turned out that the executors were officers of Moscow FSB. In the beginning, people were announced that hexogen was detected in bags placed in the basement of the house, and surviving was a real luck. Yet, on the next day, people were told that what had happened were exercises, and bags were filled with sugar. A TV program was broadcast with people of the Ryazan city blaming FSB officials, saying, "We don't believe you, you wanted to explode us." This fact was supported by a slip of the tongue by Seleznov, then Speaker of the State Duma. Media quickly hashed the gaffe when Seleznov expressed condolence concerning the explosion of the building in Moscow. He said, "Let us stand up and revere the memory of residents of Volgodonsk city." However, building in Volgodonsk city exploded only a few days after the condolence. How could Seleznov know that in advance? Quite clear. We do not want to pay attention at it. They steal our opportunity to think about it. But this is deadly for us. Your building might be the next, or subway car, or plane. We don't want our souls to be sacrificed, and that is why we talk to you about it.
И мы не хотим, чтобы наши души были принесены в жертву. И именно поэтому мы говорим с вами.
Today, population of Siberia around Sayano-Shushenskaya hydropower of Abakan city of Sayanogorsk city is in death's door. The crack in the dam keeps growing, and nobody attempts to liquidate this crack and eliminate the threat of massive loss of people's lives. The collapse of the second turbine of hydropower was inevitable. It worked on the edge, used up all resources. The industrial safety was breached. Turbines put it in service, breaching all standard acts, having no right to do that in in principle. There is an opinion that it was another terrorist act. Indeed, shares of this hydropower plant were available for sale few days before explosion. Investigation of the turbine's collapse revealed it was not an accident, but explosion. However, dam survived. God saved Russian cities. Much time passed since then. The crack appeared after the accident is growing. Dam is about to collapse. Yet, nothing has been done to improve the situation. The water is not being drained from the dam and hydropower is still in service, which badly violates safety standards. Yet, nothing has been done to improve the situation. The water is not being drained from the dam and hydropower is still in service, which badly violates safety standards. Who is to answer if irretrievable happens? Seems like another sacrifice is extremely needed to the rapture cult followers in order to hold nation in leash. The information that very soon Europe will face an environmental catastrophe because of Gulf Stream, this oven of Europe disappearance, is being hushed up. Warm and comfortable climate of the USA and Western Europe by 90% is conditioned by this oceanic stream, carrying 50 million cubic meters of warm water per second. Its power is equivalent to the power of 1 million of nuclear power plants. Dr. Zangari, Italian physicist theorist, reported on Gulf Stream situation in August 2010. He refers to the satellite data that show clearly the North Atlantic Stream doesn't exist, and Gulf Stream is starting to break down into parts in 250 kilometers from the coast of North Carolina. The crash of British petroleum oil platform on April 2010 in Mexican Gulf accelerated the process of Gulf Stream disappearance. In the mass of Mexican Gulf water, giant oil stains were found. One of the stains is located on the depth of 1,300 meters and reaches 16 kilometers at length and 90 meters at depth. Oil and chemicals used for the binding oil changed the temperature, viscosity, and salinity of water in Mexican Gulf. It caused disappearance of the stream that existed for a million years. Europe will face the inevitable fall of temperature, problems with food and heating in winter. What is it if not another sacrifice of people who are threatened by hunger and cold? Who among us thinking about it? Gulf Stream is somewhere far from us. It is not our business. We are indifferent even to what is going on in our own country. We care about what's happening in our family. We care about career. However, our thoughts do not reach any further. We are so imposed upon by the idea that everywhere is good but not in Russia, that all countries are civilized, right, and only Russia is dirty, wrong and lazy. We don't look at the politics of countries, but at their luxury, lifestyle, fashion, music culture, and long to be like them. In fact, the whole world is on the way to precipice, and the reason is this much talked about Western culture. Why? It turns out that the core condition of prolonged sustainable life is morality, purity of thoughts, feelings and intentions. They create our destiny and health. We are convinced that the world we live in is rapidly moving towards environmental and civilizational catastrophe. There are hidden but powerful forces that lead humanity along the way of ill life perception. East teaches that any challenge faced by a man was created by the man himself. His thoughts, feelings and deeds return to him as a retribution. What have we, the whole society, done if the retribution comes to us in the form of comet that really can destroy our atmosphere as it did on Mars? This time Nibiru, when passing Jupiter, took a mass of clouds 3 times bigger than Earth. What will it take from us? Remember the parable about Simeon, to whom God commanded to warn citizens of a city to be shaken for their sins. After Simeon warned people, they threw ashes over their heads and sincerely repented of their sins. Simeon left the city that was to die. All day long he sat on the mountain and waited for its death. However, the city remained there. "Oh Lord, why did you tell me to lie to people?" appeared the saint to the sky and heard the answer. People understood their sins and repented. Why should I punish them? We have the same way out. All magical manipulations with our conscience and will affect us badly, knocking us out of the way. Serpent is still sly and forces us a pleasure, oblivion, laziness, condoning weaknesses ours and of others. And the reason why Russian people fought dragon was that the great spirit of people wouldn't allow evil to tempt them.
Пошлите энергию мысли в небо, соединение с ним искусства. Мы вместе, где бы мы ни были, где бы ни встретились наши мысли и чувства. Мы вместе, где бы мы ни были, где бы ни встретились наши мысли и чувства. В одном мироздании живут наши души, сливаясь в любви светом мир озаряют. Но зависти змеи огонь этот душит, веками в сердцах люди мира не знают. Но зависти змеи огонь этот душит, веками в сердцах люди мира не знают. Пространство огромное слышит призывы сердец, что устали от злобных шипений, и хочет помочь нам, пока еще живы надежда и вера. Без тени сомнений в него обратитесь, взлетая все выше, в себе обретая опору стремления. И небо увидит, и небо услышит, и помощь направит вам в то же мгновенье.